This tip is fantastic, and here we go. 5 tips to avoid looking like the ugly American. Number 1, don't wear MAGA gear outside of the United States. Well, you might think that in the United States, you are making an important political statement. When you wear MAGA gear outside of the United States, it's incredibly offensive and insulting, and oftentimes even threatening, and makes people feel unsafe in your presence. Leave your MAGA gear for your friend groups at home.
Trump is being protested all over the world. MAGA in Europe means Make America Go Away. Europe is also wondering, where are all the adults in the USA? And this sign, it's my favorite. It's fucking brilliant. The USA already has too much ice. Those are some of my favorite signs from a massive protest that took place at the US Embassy in Copenhagen, Denmark over the weekend, because Europe is fucking pissed.
The American national anthem got booed at an NHL hockey game in Canada tonight following Donald Trump's announcement that he's placing a 25% tariff on Canada. Just take a look. Yeah, those boos were really loud. Canada is certainly unhappy with the United States. I want to remind all the MAGA lunatics out there who praise Donald Trump's every move that this trade war with Canada and Mexico helps nobody. It changes nothing for the better. This trade war angers 2 of our closest allies. It makes products in the United States significantly more expensive, and it makes it more difficult for businesses in the United States to do business with Canada or Mexico. So congratulations to MAGA. The United States is getting a lot worse really, really quickly.
Don't you just hate it when MAGA says this?
The world respects us right now more than they have ever respected us.
Well, you patriotic Trump supporters, Italy just denied our military aircraft from using their airbase. France won't allow some of our aircraft to fly over their country. Poland refused our request for a missile battery. And Spain refused to allow us to use their bases. That's not respect.
US News won't show you this, but I will. This is from a weekly French news magazine, Le Point. The title says, "The Man from Moscow." Below that, the subheadline states, "Putin and Trump, the alliance of predators." It's also important to note that this news magazine has a reputation for being center-right. This is a magazine that tends to support conservative values. In this article, the author goes on to compare Donald Trump's presidency to a geopolitical earthquake, even comparing it to the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. And the author makes a pretty strong stance that Europe as a whole can no longer rely on the United States for security and stability. It then compares the United States' proposed offer of more continued support in exchange for valuable minerals from Ukraine as financial extortion. The article makes it clear you can still believe in self-reliance and strong defense without blindly following one dangerous leader. Even European conservatives are saying this, pushing for independence while still calling out this dangerous alignment. But
do you want to know what they're saying about the United States and Donald Trump in Ireland?
We are witnessing the descent of the United States into fascism. A president who rejects election results, incites insurrection, attacks the judiciary and the media, has an armed militia intimidating minorities, who kidnaps foreign leaders and threatens the sovereignty of others. If Trump smells weakness from the EU, it's because when the US or Israel break international law, we look the other.
All over the world, they are talking about how awful he is. They are talking about the atrocities. They are talking about the ruined relationships, the ruined trade. This will take us decades, if ever, to recover from. And it's only been 1 year. Where do you live and what are you hearing about the USA?
You want to know what Australia thinks of America? Here you go. Spot. Do I blame them? Absolutely not. As I said in my New Year's video, America has become a fucking dumpster fire from Sucktown.
That moment when you go into a Northern Ireland bar and are immediately accused of being a bad person because you're from the United States. Doesn't feel very good. Culture shock, I guess. But we're staying in this cute little coastal town, and we went to just enjoy a beer, and we're like, we don't want to talk about anything or anything like that, and it just ended up with me in tears. So, if you're an American citizen, maybe just proceed with caution.
I think at this point we can all agree that for the first time in maybe very, very long, America's closest allies and neighbors are openly beginning to distance themselves from America. And I think MAGA are the latest and the last to begin to realize that this is something dangerous, and that the world can actually move on without America. Europe is actually now refusing to be dragged into Trump's confrontations, and long-term allies of America are, kind of slowly growing colder towards, that relationship. And the damage may already be actually deeper than we all can actually understand, because matters diplomacy and foreign policy are usually very sensitive. What happens when a superpower like the United States of America starts pushing away the very, very countries and allies that helped sustain, its influence for generations? Now, let's continue to watch a little longer. I'll be back with some more good analysis.
That moment when you go into a Northern Ireland bar and are immediately accused of being a bad person because you're from the United States. Doesn't feel very good.
Here's the thing. Are Americans actually being targeted because of their political affiliations or who they voted for abroad? No, not really. Maybe. But, of course, you might have to answer some questions. It's incredibly naive. The United States right now is going across the globe, destabilizing everything, making life harder for everyone. I mean every country. The global economy has been shaken to its core because of the decisions of our president, this great sadist sitting in the highest chair of our nation. But this lady is going viral on TikTok right now for all the right reasons, because she decided to go to a bar in Northern Ireland while being a MAGA supporter.
I walked in with my husband to the Central Bar, and I immediately noticed that they had the world news on. Rightfully so. There's a lot of crazy things going on in this world. And sure, they want to watch it. I'm a visitor in your country. That is completely your prerogative. The woman behind the bar was so kind. She was very nice, gave us our pints, what have you. Then the gentleman said, "Are you American?" And I said, "Yes, we're American." And I'm not lying to you when I say it instantly went from, "Yes, I'm American," to, "Well, who'd you vote for?" And I kind of was just shocked. I'm like, wow, that was very direct. And I said, we're on vacation. We're trying to get away from all of that. We don't really want to talk about it.
Yeah, but the internet remembers, and it doesn't matter how much you try to delete all your pro-Trump posts, the internet's going to find them. And that's exactly what happened.
Posted this the other day talking about how we're canceling people because of who they allegedly voted for. But wait, I saw this. What was that? And what is this one?
Oh, so you really don't care about illegal immigrants being detained by ICE and families being separated? No.
See, the thing a lot of MAGA supporters don't understand is that the majority of the world despise them. So when they take their asses outside the United States and actually understand that they're not liked, they're always confused. They think that it doesn't really matter who I vote for, that's my personal choice. But when your personal choice inflicts harm and pain on countries all over the world, and a nation like Ireland, a nation that's been historically oppressed for hundreds and hundreds of years, they take these kind of things personally. So yeah, I think it's about time that when you start seeing American tourists go to these places, whether it be in Europe, whether it be in Mexico, whether it be anywhere, and they're wearing their MAGA hat and they're, showing their bullshit, or you find out about it, or you want to ask them questions about it. I actually think that's fine. If you walk up to me and you're like, "Who'd you vote for?" I'd be like, "Please look at my channel." You want to know my opinions on everything? It's on there. But you're so brave and so bold when you're in America. Carry that same energy when you leave the country. Carry that same energy when you go to Canada.
What pisses you off about Americans? I think everyone in the East hates Americans because you guys think you own the world. And she kind of has a point. She kind of has a point. You guys has caused enough trouble. Honestly, just go back to America. Oh.
People all around the world are absolutely hating Americans right now. More specifically, they're hating who's in charge, but there is a trickle-down effect to those who voted for Trump. There are so many people in this country that don't realize we are not viewed favorably. We are not the golden children that you think that we are. The rest of the world is moving on without us. The rest of the world is finding other allies and finding other resources. Many of you keep doubling and tripling down on what the Trump administration is currently doing, but there are many of us that can see clearly that we are losing our allies right and left. Have you had a conversation with a Canadian lately? I understand that many of you voted for this, and this is exactly what you want. But there are plenty of us that are not okay with the way things are going right now. And we understand why the rest of the world is fed up with us.
Traveling to Europe when you have a president that Europe respects is so much nicer than traveling to Europe when you have a president that the rest of the world despises. Trump is obviously huge in that right now. Like, nobody likes Trump outside of MAGA in the United States. I've traveled under every presidency since like the first Bush, the OG Bush. And I will say though that lately with like Trump, I was just in Paris and Lisbon in like the last like 2 months, month and a half, and everyone was very kind. They were like, here's what you have to do. If somebody's like, where are you from? You say United States, I'm so sorry. Then they realize like you're a safe space. And then all of a sudden I actually was met with a lot of like pity, kind of. Like, people were like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, I know it's awful. Like, I think the thing is, as long as you're not like, yeah, America, we love our president, then like that is going to like be the huge difference. I remember I was in New Zealand when George W. Bush was president, and I was with like Studying Abroad, and some like the bouncer at this bar was like, oh, you're Americans, like what do you think of the president? And me and my friend were the only two like liberals there, and we're like, fuck him, he's a war criminal. And they're like, come on in. And the rest of the people were like, no, we love America. And they like didn't let them in the bar. That's like the worst I've ever seen of somebody treating an American badly because of the president. As long as you're just like open that you did not vote for him and you don't like it, and like I'm always like, I'm American, I'm so sorry, I didn't vote for this. And that makes it so much better.
You wouldn't have gone on holiday to Nazi Germany, would you? You wouldn't have gone and spent your hard-earned money in a state that was actively committing a genocide, would you? You wouldn't have knowingly gone and spent your money and therefore supported an economy of a state that was knowingly committing human rights monstrosities, would you? So why the fuck are we still going to America on vacation? How many countries has the US bombed in the last 12 months? Yemen, Somalia, Iran, Iraq, Syria. They've obviously massively funded the genocide in Palestine. They've kidnapped the Venezuelan president. Oh, they're kidnapping their own people on the streets and shooting people in the face if they dare to try and stop them. But you want to go there? You want to choose to go there? I can only assume that if you've managed to get a visa to go to the United States of embarrassment, you likely have the opportunity to go to many other places. Explain it to me like I'm 5. There's one thing, it's difficult to avoid supporting America in some sense because so much is owned by them, so many companies are owned by them. And I'm trying not to be too judgmental, but if you're actively choosing to get on a plane, pay your visa fees, and go spend money in that hellhole, can you explain it to me? Because I don't understand. The whole country music hype that was going on in 2025, like, you could call me a tin foil hat, whatever. I believe that was propaganda. I think that was a deliberate campaign to make America cool again, to distract us from the disgusting things that they keep doing. And I fear that a lot of us fell for it. A lot of us ate it up. America is fascist. And if you are choosing to go there for a jolly, you are supporting fascism.
I want you to take note to the fact that America is literally collapsing. Like, the world is watching us die. They're making fun of the fact that we have to stand in line for healthcare. Our food is poisoned. We're out here, burning stuff down. We're out here fighting each other. The racism, all of this stuff that's going on. And not one country is hanging an American flag to support us. To say, hey, go help Americans. Americans are dying in record numbers. Let's help them. Let's be on their side. Not one. You know why? Because it just proves that our government has been lying about what we have been doing when we go over to these countries. Because if we were the heroes that we claim to be, they would have protests everywhere. Help America, help Americans, help America. The only time they have done that, Black Lives Matter. They have said no to Trump, but no American flags are being hung. So, before you believe what this administration or any other news outlet says about any other country around the world, specifically black and brown, because that's the ones they love to dog out, please understand no one around the world is coming to save us because they actually don't like us. They don't. And I get it.
This is why the world is not like America, and by extension, Americans. I often see a lot of confused Americans wondering why people in other countries do not like them. But the answer is actually very simple. Most Americans do not know the true history of their country. And the US's reach is huge when it comes to destabilizing countries and destroying the environment. Overthrowing governments that are democratically elected, villainizing and sanctioning countries that fail to do what they want, sabotaging the progress of countries that are typically resource-rich, contributing to genocides in mass slaughter around the world by providing money and weapons to regimes that are known to commit human rights abuses. And if it's not destroying your country through these tangible and bureaucratic means, also just illegal, then they're destroying your country culturally. And what's crazy is the more that I learn about the histories of certain cultures in certain regions, the one thing that I'm noticing is that the US always leaves a trail, whether it's a trail of blood, bodies, and just complete disaster. They completely rewrite history and peddle lies about their impact abroad, rather pushing this narrative to its citizens that it brings freedom and democracy to other countries when everyone else who's been impacted by this country knows that that's a lie. And Americans believe it. I grew up in the US and was educated in the US education system. And it was only until I went to university in the US that I actually learned the truth about what this country has done abroad. But to know the raw and true history of the US is a rarity amongst the American population. And when your country has had such disastrous effects globally, especially on the global majority, people are not going to like you if you state the antithesis and you state propaganda that literally goes against the realities that people are living still to this day.
You know what's so infuriating about the MAGA movement and just pure evil is that they pretend to represent God and Jesus, but the entire movement is built on a lie. From politicians to pastors, if you stand up and say that the 2020 election was not stolen, that there's zero evidence to support this claim, that Trump made it up out of thin air before all the votes had even been counted, and certainly before any investigation had been done, then instantly you're canceled. Canceled for telling the truth. And let me tell you something. It's impossible to do the Lord's work using the devil's toolbox.
Are you a MAGA follower? Please do not come to Mexico. Do not come to Cancun. Do not come to Puerto Vallarta or Acapulco. Stay in the United States. Eat your Taco Bells. Eat your burritos. Eat your whatever you got back home. In Mexico, we already know that MAGA people hate Mexicans. We already know that you support Donald Trump, who is a really bad guy for Mexicans. They are putting our people in prisons. They are attacking our people. They are disappearing little children, separating families. We don't like MAGA people here in Mexico. And if you come, please do not bring your orange hat saying MAGA. Do not come with your shirt saying MAGA, because I've seen cases where MAGAs have been attacked by Mexicans in Cancun. At least they get knocked on their head, or at least they insult them, and we are right. We know you hate us in the United States, so where are you gonna come to Cancun with your offending us with your MAGA shirts or hats? Stay in the United States, you're better there. Why do you come to Cancun? Why do you come to Mexico? If you don't like us, stay there.
Now, what Donald Trump and much of the MAGA movement seem to underestimate is that allies are not sustained through pressure, bullying, but actually through trust and consistency. Over the years, America positioned itself as the anchor of the so-called the Western world alliance system. But what we've been seeing recently, the recent shifts in foreign policy under Donald Trump, the trade tensions and trade wars and tariffs, diplomatic frictions, they have begun to strain even the most of established relationships the US had. We're talking about the relationship the US had with Canada, the relationship the US had with NATO allies. And today across Europe, there's a growing reluctance to automatically align with, with Washington's strategic direction. Yeah, currently. Some nations are questioning the reliability, actually, of the American leadership, for instance, especially when it comes to policy shifts that they deem or they appear to be so tied to domestic political cycles rather than long-term global strategy. We are just allies. These are independent countries and they also have their interest. So if at all what they're seeing happening in Washington seems not to benefit them, then they could deem it as it's an American only interest, and what MAGA often frames as strength. And this is the point. Like, for example, what we're seeing Trump doing, bullying allies and threatening them, is increasingly being interpreted abroad as unpredictability. Because what we are seeing is Trump saying one thing today, and tomorrow he says the exact opposite. That is being unpredictable. And this is where the deeper issues begin to emerge. When, allies begin to feel that cooperation comes with constant pressure. America has to pressure them. It's not like they have to be in any agreement. There is tariffs, there is threats of confrontation. We saw that with the most recent case with the Iran war. He's trying to drag Europe into it, NATO into it, and he's threatening Spain, for example. These allies, they start to adjust. Not by open confrontation, of course. They are not going to confront the US directly, but a quiet recalibration, diversify partnerships, for example. They think about strengthening regional bonds, if it is the EU. This is how global influence begins to erode. And maybe this is what MAGA doesn't realize. It's not a sudden, dramatic diplomatic collapse, but a steady redistribution of a once American-only influence. There was a time when everybody would listen to America because if Europe, a well-established place, can also listen and go America's way, then, everybody thought it was a wise idea. But if America loses that influence it has on Europe and their own closest allies and even neighbors, Canada and Mexico to the south, then everybody else on the sidelines can start to think about the same. NATO, for example, was designed as a defensive alliance, like, of course, built on the shared interest of the many members in it. But what we've seen recently, especially with this Middle East confrontation with Iran, there's been a European hesitation that has grown around being drawn into these conflicts or, strategies that are, for them, they think it is primarily serving American interest, even though we've also, seen Americans saying that, this war is not even in their own interest. It is probably in the interest of Trump and his closest allies. So that hesitation is not necessarily rejection, but is a signal that adjustment is no longer automatic for the US, From the MAGA perspective, actually, this is often framed as disloyalty, ingratitude. If you want to know how MAGA think, you listen to Donald Trump. For him, Spain not allowing to be dragged into that, the war in Iran, for him, that is them being disloyal. But it's not the case. Europe refusing, Australia condemning the war, Europe, the many different countries in Europe who are not in support of the war. For Trump and MAGA, they think that's not, they automatically have to agree with with such policies. But from a European perspective, it is being practical. Nations are responding to what they perceive as a shifting American posture, one that mixes alliance with pressure and cooperation with coercion, And the irony herein is that today we live in a multipolar world, and in a multipolar world like this, power is no longer maintained or, simply by dominance or your military capabilities and military strength. No, it is actually sustained through stable relationships and a predictable leadership. When that predictability weakens or wears out, other global actors we have today, other superpowers, they jump in to fill the space, to fill the gap that is left by America. Trade, alliances, and influence begins to diversify. People start looking towards China, towards Russia, and elsewhere that they can get their, whatever they're looking for. So this is actually bad for America, because it means that now the once concentrated influence they had is diversifying to other places. So what we are witnessing is not just a political tension between leaders of the EU, and America and other, America's allies, but a broader reconfiguration of global, trust networks. And the United States, of course, is still very powerful, but its ability to assume like automatic alignment from allies is no longer guaranteed, clearly, and that shift, whether it is temporary or perhaps long-term, is reshaping how the world organizes itself, without having to wait for the approval of the government in Washington. Yeah, so really that's my take, that's my analysis of what's going on, and let me know what you think. Leave me a comment on your thoughts, and I'll really be happy to know what you think about it. If you love this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next video.